Whoa, wait a minute! Death combos couldn't have been so easy in Tekken 5, right? Well, yes and no. This particular combo is possible due to stun links. But what are stun links? Answers to this question and much more in this episode of what made old school Tekken ruthless. So the first topic on the list here is stuns, as you've seen previously. The three types of stuns I want to talk about are the double over stun, the nosebleed stun, and I guess the backfall stun for lack of a better name. So what are stuns? They are basically hit animations that give a lot of plus frames to the attacker, like more than plus 10 at least. And we're talking real plus frames too, not the kind where it says plus 13 but they can block, like you see in ballerina stuns and other hit animations. These stuns can let you launch the opponents, as you can see. Sounds pretty busted, right? Well, actually they are not very strong because of the next point. You can actually break these stuns, and each one has its own specific break, as we're going to see right now. Going back to the double over stun, this is definitely the most interesting one. The break for this stun actually depends on what game you were playing. In Tekken 4, 5, and 6, if you got hit with a double over, you had to hold forward, as you can see, to break, which is very counterintuitive because you are otherwise never incentivized to hold forward in Tekken, like ever. It was made easier in Tag 2, where they started letting you break it with back, making it much easier just because it's kinda instinctual for Tekken players to press back after getting hit. Another reason the double over stun was interesting is that in the much older games, Tekken 4 and 5, some double overs, namely Kazuya's while standing 2, let you stun link the opponents. So what are these stun links? Basically, if you hit someone with a double over and they don't break it, you can hit the opponent again with certain moves that don't normally launch and they will still give you a full combo. Some examples of these moves on Kazuya are jabs, down forward 2, standing 3, and while standing 2 itself, although it will not give the same stun as before, so as to stop pseudo infinites if the opponent doesn't know how to break double over. In the later games, T6 and Tag 2, stun links don't exist, so death combos aren't as easy, but you will still get hit by perfect electric levels of damage, so you better break those. The second type of stun on the list is the aptly named nosebleed stun. It is predominantly caused by highs. The only exception to this that I know of at least is Elisa up 3. To break these, all you have to do is press down, in which case you will fall down to the ground, which is much better than eating the follow-up standing most of the times. In terms of reward, Nosebleed is the least rewarding of all the stuns. Most of them only leave the attacker with plus 10 or plus 11, around that range. As always, there are exceptions to this, like Harang, who has 2 of these that can both combo into just frame skyrocket for some obscene damage, as you can see. There's a bunch of other smaller details, like for example Elisa up 3 too, where she always gets a hit after the nosebleed, but if you break the stun and fall down, you will take less damage because you are considered airborne, which brings us to the next detail. If you are playing against someone who's really good, it's sometimes better not to break the stun, because if they know you're gonna do that, they can float you off the ground for a full combo, and so it becomes a kind of mind game. Are you going to fall down and risk getting floated, or are you gonna keep standing and eat a mix-up or some guaranteed damage? Anyway, nosebleed stuns do give some solid damage if they're not broken, but if you are looking for the really good stuff in terms of damage, look no further than the next type of stun on the list. The backfall stun, as you can see, is a stun where the character falls on their caboose, or their derriere, as the French would say, and then they stand back up. To break this stun, all you have to do is tech roll as you are falling to the ground. And just like the normal tech roll, you have iframes during the animation, so you're still minus a lot after the stun if you tech it, but at least the opponent doesn't get anything guaranteed, so you should always break the stun. More than that, you have to break this stun. Otherwise, you're just forfeiting the round. Just look at the damage on the screen right now. These stuns give like plus 13 frame advantage at the very least, and there are cases like Law, for example, where it's somewhere around plus 30. So needless to say, if you get hit by one of these, you better break the stun if you want to live. If you've been asking yourself what happened to these stuns in Tekken 8, well, each one got sent its own way, I guess, since the Backfall stun doesn't exist anymore. They removed the Backfall animation, and the new animation that kinda looks like it doesn't give true plus frames so they can block the follow-ups. The Nosebleed stun was largely removed, and the ones that still exist like Nina back 4 and Elisa up 3 are actually unbreakable now. So in the case of Elisa up 3 too, you can't make yourself fall to mitigate the damage of the second hit. It's mostly the same for Double Over. It was replaced with other, like, similar animations. The only case of Double Over that I could still find in Tekken 8 is generic up forward 3, which actually breaks itself now, so you don't need to do anything to break it. And so it looks like a stun, but it's not really a stun. And that is pretty much the gist of stuns and stun breaks in the older Tekken games. Makes you wonder why they removed them, right? The next topic on the list is the Jumpover tech trap, and I think the best way to talk about it is to see how it evolved throughout the games. So let's go back all the way to Tekken 5. The wall system was changed, so wall techs are no longer a thing like in Tekken 4, and for the first time in Tekken, you can hit your opponent while they are on the wall. This is known as a wall combo. So wall combos did a lot of damage in Tekken 5, as you can see. It was even higher when you factor in tech traps like Brian's, for example. But one of the unexpected consequences of the new wall system was jumpovers. So when they peel off the wall and tech roll, which is this right here, you can jump over them and they will stand up facing the wrong way. Although you will also land from the jump facing the wrong way too, but you, the jumper, are free to move way earlier than the opponents. This led to guaranteed stuff, which we will go over later, but my guess here is that since the follow-ups after a jump over were a bit finicky and the wall combos already did lots of damage by themselves, the jump over tech trap was used very seldom, at least until Tekken 6 onwards, which updated the wall system again, and so it stayed like this from T6 all the way to Tekken 7 patch 5.01, if I'm not mistaken. So in this system, characters don't peel off the wall like T5, but they slide down the wall, even like they do right now in Tekken 8. Wall combo damage was toned down like crazy, and backturned moves tracked way better, giving people much more incentive to go for the tech trap if the splat happened at an angle and not head-on with the wall. The tech traps themselves were very diverse. The most common route people used to do after a successful jump over was backturned down jab, since it was +9 actually on hit, meaning that unless the opponent was cracked and OD and knew to turn around using forward instead of back, a lot of launchers and other sequences were guaranteed, as you can see. There is also the much cooler character-specific stuff, like backturned launchers rather, and grab setups for example, not to mention the biggest abuser of the wall system, Link Xiaoyu. Her setup is not strictly a jump over tech trap rather, though it can be, and it is basically a sequence that will loop itself until you either die, get saved by a corner, or like get launched backturn, which it's a brutal sequence. But it was pretty rare to both meet a Xiaoyu who can do this and for the right conditions to arise, so it was very uncommon to see this in a real match. Going back to normal jumpovers, these were really good setups, like if they worked. But the thing that made them reasonable tech traps instead of busted 2-touch instant win setups was that they were very predictable. In order for these setups to work, the character had to hit the wall at a certain angle, right? And the other character had to be further along that specific axis for the jump over itself to be consistent. So if any decent player saw that these conditions are met, like while they are getting comboed, they simply wouldn't tech. Easy, problem solved. Sure, it could happen to you the first time you play against someone new because you don't really know if they like to go for jumpovers or not, but after that, after the first time, the play was always to stay on the ground. And so it stayed like this, it stayed this way really for a long time. Tekken 6, Tag 2, Tekken 7 Season 1, 2, 3, and 4. Now, the problem here is that Tekken 7 had an issue, a problem really, and this problem was called Akuma. Akuma had a jump over tech trap, just like basically everyone else in the roster, but he was a bit different from the rest of the characters, and that's why he was a problem. He was different in that, for him to do his jump over, he didn't need to have you at a specific angle from the wall, and then have like to sidestep to himself be at another specific angle, none of that whatsoever. Any deviation from the wall, as small as it was enough for him to hit you in the back. In fact, he could carry you to the wall head on with no angle or deviation whatsoever and still hit your back and get a wall splat from that wall into the same situation if he wanted. So for Akuma, the jump over tech wasn't really situational, it wasn't a suggestion, it was just his staple, and it didn't really help that his demon flip 4 rather, the move that he uses for this setup, hits grounded, so even if you didn't tech roll, you ate some guaranteed damage because you chose like the right option, which was not to tech. Now the Tekken team, in their infinite wisdom, instead of nerfing Akuma himself, they decided to nerf the whole system, right? So they changed tech rolls at the wall so that instead of always making the character face away from the wall, it will now track the opponents, and by it I mean the tech roll of course. It will now track the opponents and do its best to face them by the time the tech roll ends, which solved the problem. Akuma down 1-2 Demon Flip 4 tech is no more, but as a collateral to this fix, all the jump over tech was impossible to perform. No one could jump over the opponents and have them face the wrong way so that they could hit their back. Not even at that specific angle that made them consistent, but predictable. Even Xiaoyu's Infinite was nerfed by this patch. So Akuma was successfully nerfed, but with that nerf, the whole dimension of the 17-year-long jump over tech trap was gone. And you guys wanna know the funniest part about all of this? It's really funny when you think about it. It didn't take Akuma players a week, not even a week. I still remember this, it was like 3 or 4 days. It took them 4 days to find the new setup that hit the opponents in the back, just like the last one, and this time like it was down 1 while standing 2 into Demon Flip 4. So they changed, the dev team changed the whole system to nerf this one guy, removing one of the flashiest parts of wall game in Tekken as a whole, and the guy in question didn't even feel any of it. So that's the birth, life, and death of the jump over tech trap. And the last part of old school Tekken rootlessness that I want to talk about, which is more like a bonus because it's not that deep really, is the lack of defensive crutches, and by that I mainly mean Power Crush and Rage Art. Now I'm not trying to toot my own horn, as they say, but I'm pretty decent at Tekken, and I still lost my first Tech 2 online games while trying to adapt to it. And after playing for a while, it didn't take too long for me to realize that I had become over-reliant on Power Crushes like King Muscle Armor for defense, and high coverage moves like King Forward Forward 1 for offense, although it doesn't really have anything to do with defense, but you get the points. In fact, I would argue that the worst netcode of the older games, coupled with the lack of Power Crush, make it so that getting the opponents off of you is harder in the older games compared to the new ones, even with the good backdash and the good sidestep and whatever. And going back to like the bad netcode, it's even harder to make use of the better movements in these games because of the delay frames rather that get added on, the input lag plus the display lag, and it all makes it that much harder to whiff punish, especially if you sidestep something quick like a down forward 2 or a down forward 1. But that's a very minor issue since it doesn't exist in offline play, of course. But what I am sure of is that defense in these games is much more different than, let's say, Tekken 8, even more so if you rely on Power Crush a lot in the newer games. Again, I really do recommend everyone try these older games if you can play them. It doesn't matter whether you're a new player or you're an old player or whatever, try them out. See for yourself how they play and how they feel. I guarantee you it will be a very refreshing experience after 2 years of Tekken 8. So these were 3 other ways the older Tekken games were considered ruthless and hardcore compared to the newer entries. And I mean ruthless as in, if one of the players knew how to use these strats and these mechanics and the other one didn't, it was going to be a beatdown, right? It was going to be a blowout. But if they both knew about these things, it became a part of the mind games, and that's how it was balanced and fair and reasonable while still being unforgiving to the players who didn't know how to deal with these things yet. And you know, with the latest Tekken 8 patch that nerfed heat and whatnot, I thought I'd keep the complaining to a minimum, which brings me to my next point. I don't expect them to bring any of this back to Tekken. Not the stuff I talked about in this video, and not the stuff I talked about in the previous video either, like the Oki system, and the smaller buffer windows, and the old throw break system, right? So there's no use living in the past. And as long as Tekken 8 improves and becomes a game where the better player wins more often, I'll keep making these videos. Not to complain about what Tekken has become recently, but to document the unique mechanics, or lack thereof, that existed in the previous games as a type of documentation. But that's provided Tekken 8 does get better, of course. If the May update comes out, and it's more of the same, like Tekken 8 stuff, we'll see then, right? We'll see. Anyway, that's about it. Please like and subscribe if you enjoyed the video, those would help me a lot. Share your thoughts on these mechanics in the comments below, and yeah, this has been Magician. Take care and have a good one.